Hello there, crafty doer. Jessica Michaels here, diving into my paper scrap stash to create a mixed media patriotic tag. So grab a comfy chair, grab all your crafty things, and let's get into the crafty doings. I selected three main colors for the beginning of this tag. I will be doing some paper collaging. Now, I don't know if I'm going to use all of these pattern papers, but when I do paper collaging, I definitely like to give myself options and have variety spread out to see what sparks my creativity. So to begin, I'm going to use Liquid-X Matte Medium, and I like to use a paintbrush to brush some of it onto my base. And I usually don't get it all covered up. So when I place it down, I use the paintbrush to kind of just squeeze some more medium under it and then polish it off on top. I do want to take a second to remind myself that this is only paper and to not be afraid. If it warps, I can bend it right back up. Don't let fear enter your creative process. Otherwise, you're just going to limit yourself. So now I'm going to take the blue pattern paper and red pattern paper and continue to collage my tag. I'm going to take my scissors and snip the pattern paper that went over the edges before I go on to my next medium, noting that I did allow for drying time between layers. This is just a gesso paste. Some of it is dry in there. All I have to do is spritz it with water and leave it overnight or until the next time I need to use it, and it'll be ready to go. So I'm just going to sporadically stencil in this pattern onto my tag. And once I'm done doing this, I like to use the leftover medium that is on my palette to very lightly and gently spread the edges of the pattern so it looks a little bit more organic, or dare I use the word imperfect. My next medium is going to be this tea dye color Distress Oxide, and I'm going to dilute it with some water and add it to the white spaces on my tag. I am also going to add a little bit on the already tan pattern paper just to give it some flow. Now, I've never used this color. It is my first time, so I was eager to use it. And I'm noticing that it's covering up a little too much of the white, but it is not a big deal. I cannot reiterate enough with mixed media. You can always just add more and sometimes take away, like with the distress line. And I say that because I've never really used any other lines. I'm mostly familiar with the distress line, and most of the time, yes, you're absolutely able to take away some of the mediums. Next, I need to find a blue to start adding to the top left-hand corner. And I thought about the Distress Oxide, but I saw from the corner of my eye the watercolor pencils. And the prize ribbon is gorgeous. So I'm just going to add some water to my paintbrush and start adding it heavily on the top so that it starts dripping down, and spritz it to help that drippage. I love using a paintbrush for this technique because it gives me a little bit more controls. And that's what I need for this area, because I don't want the blue to drip on to the white or the red. And if you can't tell already, it's because my design here is to make it look like the American flag with the blue and the stars and then the stripes down below. I have to remember to always dry in between layers. So next I'm going to add a little splatter just to add a little bit more interest, and also try to use up as much product as I can that's sitting on my glass mat. The next color I'm going to use is Lumberjack. And this is also a new color for me that I've been excited to use. I'm going to use the same technique as I did with the watercolor pencil, which is start heavy at the top and let it drip. Use my paintbrush for control and spritz as I need to help that drippage. Okay, so after drying those couple of layers, the oxide and the red watercolor pencil, I decided that I wanted some more of that tea dye color. So I'm just simply doing the same thing as I did the first time and diluting the Distress Oxide on my glass mat, using my paintbrush to kind of spread that around a little bit. And as I am doing this, I'm seeing that it's a little too much on the orange kind of side, but let's see what it looks like after I dry it, because that changes sometimes with mediums. Yeah, so my go-to is usually either antique linen or vintage photo. So let me spray a little bit of both. Maybe I'll spray the vintage photo on this side so I can have more control of the medium with my paintbrush. This is looking a lot better, a lot more my style. The other one was getting a little too clean, I think, but I'm liking this much better. What do you think? Would you have done the cleaner version or this little more grungy version? Let me know in the comments below. Now here's a trick that I like to do. I think I might have mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but if I just grab this gesso and it's white, I'm doing two things. One, I'm bringing back some more of that white that I'm missing, that I've covered up so much with the tea dye, but also I'm spreading the medium at the edges of the torn paper, and it helps it blend into the tag, or also blend into the colors. And I could have done this at the beginning, or even better now, because it's helping me bring back that white. But it's something that I definitely like to include when I do paper collaging. Here's my little bin of scraps and of bits and pieces. I couldn't tell you half of where I get these. I don't like to toss them when I die cut something, and I don't end up using it, so it ends up in this little bin. So I'm gonna go through it, and I choose this praying gal that I got from Giraffe Studio, I believe it is. I'll link them down below, but I like her because of her praying hands, and that is what the sentiment is that I have planned for this tag. So I'm gonna stick her down right here, and I don't like the edge. When I printed her out, I should say, she had a blue rectangle background, and I fussy cut her, but now I'm left with this bottom straight edge. This is a Tim Holtz stamp, I do recognize, but the white is too vibrant, so I'm going to grunge it up a little with a vintage photo, and as well as this rose, which I may or may not use. But the idea is to put the moth right down here and cover up her edge. I do dive into my bin again, pull out some pieces and place them on top of the tag to see if that sparks anything, but I think I'm good. I am going to add my favorite little detail, which is a little bit of machine stitching, and the idea is to kind of replicate the white stripes on the flag, and that's why I stitched them horizontally. So let's put these embellies together. Now I'm going to grab some mummy cloth, and I'm going to add a little bit of Distress Oxide in the faded jeans and lumberjack, and I'm simply going to just rub it right on top of the mummy cloth and spritz it and use the mummy cloth to clean that up, and that should give it some color. I don't want to completely saturate the cloth in the color because I want some of that off-white to come through, and of course a little vintage photo to grunge it up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add the blue cloth front of the blue and the red in front of the red. I'm going to cover my praying gal's face and then splatter some white. I'm going to try to dry it as much as I can because I don't want it to smear when I pick it up and add the eyelet to my tag. It's going to be a bit difficult, but this is a perfect chance for you to see how impatient I can get with my paper crafts. Now I am going to add some brads to this tag, and to make it a little easier to punch them through the tag, I'm going to just poke some holes using my X-Acto knife, and that's definitely going to help it make it easier to push through. I did dive back into my embellishment scrap bin and found this chipboard heart that I thought was perfect to kind of like the cherry on top here at the bottom. I used a watercolor pencil, which looked really cool, as if like, I just got a crayon and colored it, but I'm extra. So then I went ahead and added some water so it can do what it was meant to do. And I definitely do like the look of that better. And I simply just adhere it with some glitter glue right here at the bottom, which I think helps bring the blue from the stars up here down to the red. And once I start thinking about that, I decide that I want to add that same blue to my praying gal's crown here. The last thing I have left to do is to add ribbon, and I happen to have this gorgeous vibrant blue ribbon that I'm going to half knot here. I think a final touch that I want to add because of the eyelet is a little bit of gold foundry wax. And I remember that I have a little bit here dried up left over from a different project, but it's a little too bright. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit of this slightly darker foundry wax. And all I have to do is add isopropyl alcohol to reactivate it, I guess. And I'm going to splatter just a tiny bit here, there, here, and there. If you haven't played with foundry wax before, you do have to heat set it. This paper project is a part of Friends in Faith Hop that takes place on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, and it is organized by the Crafty Farm Chick. Find us on Instagram. I will have the rest of the creators linked below if you want to hop along. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. I hope that you and yours are safe and happy this 4th of July. God bless you and God bless America. Until the next crafty doings.